We create wealth with an intention that our generations will pass on this wealth to our kids. And then our kids will pass on the wealth to their kids. And their kids of their kids will pass on the wealth to their kids. So that is primarily the intention, isn't it? And we want to ensure that we pass on wealth to our kids as much as possible. But when last did you really think about it to say, what happens when I pass on? What do I need to do to ensure that the money that I pass on to the next generation is as much as possible? And what have you identified as things that reduces the money that we are passing on to our kids? Why tax is not something that you identified? If you identified, what type of taxes are there? Now we're getting to the answer. Now, do you know that obviously when you pass this on, potentially you might find yourself having to pay an estate duty? What is this estate duty, Shilibo, you are talking about? So there's what simplest formula is that when you've made more than 3.5 in terms of wealth, and you've got what you call dutiable amount that is above 3.5, you will be subjected to what you call an estate duty, and it can be very heavy, right? Would you agree with me that that is another form of reducing the wealth that you pass on to the next generation? Why do you want to voluntarily do that, right? So why can't you make sure that you don't do that? Okay, now let's move on. You know that there must be somebody who is appointed to ensure that what you've owned when you're still alive, it's actually removed from your names and then it passed on to whoever you are intending to give. In this case, your kids, your wife, your surviving spouse, for that matter. Now, ever wonder that that particular person that has to be hired to do all this process has to be paid? How do you go about not ensuring that you pay that particular? Because if that person is charging 3.5% of the gross value of your wealth, think about it. Let's say your gross value of your assets is sitting at 10 million, 20 million. How much is 3.5% of that? That's a lot of money that could easily finance a business idea of your kids. Why do you have to voluntarily pay that? We know that when you pass on, there's what you call capital gain tax implication potentially, which means that you are deemed to have sold the assets that you owned. Some of these assets, if they are not for personal use purposes, can be subject to such particular capital gain tax. Why do you want to pay that? I'm asking you, right? Why do you want to pay that? Now, you must also pay those who are going to do valuations of these assets. Why? Then, Shilly Boy, if I don't want to pay all these things, what is the solution for that? And that's why it's so important to assess if you are creating this wealth that is actually growing in value. Maybe it's about time to consider that you're creating this wealth away from yourself in such a way that this wealth is actually distant from you, but you're still creating this wealth. And what is that instrument that is out there? It's a trust. Because that gives us opportunity to distance ourselves from the wealth that we're creating as a family, so that when we pass on, we don't pay those expenses that we don't want to pay that reduces our wealth. Isn't the benefit, isn't great? That's one of the things. So tell me, why do you want to voluntarily pay all those expenses? Share with me, why do you want to voluntarily pay for all those things? Good luck if you want to pay. But for those who don't want to pay, you know what to do. Just reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about it to say, let's pass on as many wealth as possible to our grandchildren, to our kids. Isn't what you're looking forward to? What about that little daughter of yours who's a minor child? Don't you want her to have a soft life, travel the world, and expose and be enriched with culture's knowledge that is out there? But she can only do that if she has sufficient and she inherits sufficient money. Isn't the case? Yes. She can have a coffee at her own times. She can invest with private equity. Guys, she can invest with venture capitals. Guys, because she can only do that if you pass on as much wealth as possible. Good luck. Reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. I'm passionate about wealth protection. Let's do this.